Okay, so let's begin. So we have the 6 principles of unfinished learning. We covered that last time. Remember, we have to maintain the inclusion of each and every learner. We have to identify and address gaps in learning through instruction, especially now that students had the quarantine, they are learning remotely, so there are gaps in learning. We will focus on the commonalities that students share in this time of crisis in order to build classroom community. We will stick to grade level content and instructional rigor. So last time we spent lots of time talking about this, the importance of sticking to grade level content and instructional rigor. And we spoke about using scaffolding tools and strategies to give students access to grade level content. We will also focus on the depth of instruction rather than the pace. So it's all about depth of instruction, not pace. We're focusing on student learning. It's not about how much we cover, but it's how well the students understand what we wanted to teach. So the key is to prioritize content and learning. So these are the 6 principles of unfinished learning. So these were our intended outcomes for October 28th, right? So we spoke about unfinished learning, the 6 overarching principles that we can use to support students. And we also spoke about the priority learning standards, which come from the NGLS. For November 17th, we reviewed and made connections between the 6 principles of unfinished learning and DML's teacher supports for English language and multilingual learners. So what scaffolding tools, what scaffolding strategies, what digital tools can we use to address students' unfinished learning? We also examined learning maps to explore pedagogical practices. And from the learning maps you added to your repertoires, we analyzed a unit of study to identify high leverage pedagogical practices found in the learning maps, and we filled in the gaps. We also reflected on our current level of expertise and identified potential next steps. So at this time, what we are going to do is we are going to take 5 minutes to complete a Google form entitled BK South L Team Quarter 1 Reflection. So what were you able to implement? How have you impacted student learning? So as you reflect, keep this question in mind. How do I know students are learning? So keep this sentence stem in mind. I know students are learning because as you complete the BK South L Team Quarter 1 Reflection. So at this time, I'll put the link in the chat and it won't take you long to complete it. So here are our intended outcomes for December 15th for today. We are going to use the Read, Talk, Write cycle to develop students' literacy skills in all content areas. We are going to examine a vignette to learn how teachers use the Read, Talk, Write cycle with ELLs and our MLs. And we are going to analyze a lesson within a unit to identify evidence of the Read, Talk, Write cycle. Also, we are going to reflect on current lesson and identify potential next steps. So as you can see, this agenda is packed. It's packed. We have to talk about Chancellor's priorities for the school year 2020-2021. He has the priorities to deepen and expand our shared commitment to equity and excellence. We need to advance equity now. And how do we advance equity now? By accelerating learning and instruction, partnering with communities, and developing people. All right, so we spoke about this before, the ILF. The ILF, as you know, stands for Instructional Leadership Framework. Why do we have the ILF? Because we'd like to create a supportive environment and set rigorous expectations for every student. Okay, and how do we do that? We do that by strengthening core instruction. To do so, we have to have high standards. We have to have high expectations for our ELLs, for all of our students. So we have the next generation learning standards. We also have the learning maps that gives us ideas on how we can give students access to complex texts. So we use the 4 hallmarks of advanced literacy to create units that develop students' academic language skills in all the content area classes. And that's how we strengthen core instruction. We have to know every student well. That's how we provide a supportive environment. So we have to meet our students' social, emotional needs as well as their academic needs. Also, we must have shared and inclusive curriculum. And that is so important because we want to have equity. That's one of the Chancellor's priorities, right? Equity is very important. And it means that if you have 4 ELA teachers at the high school level, they all teach 9th grade, they're all ELA teachers, all of them would use the same curriculum. And all students, ELLs, MLs, students with disabilities, honor students would have access to the same curriculum. But for the ELLs, we would use a lot of scaffolding tools and strategies to give them access to grade level content. So that's what that means, having a shared and inclusive curriculum. We are including all of our learners. At the center is text, and that connects to Hallmark 1. Students are always reading and talking about complex text. They are talking about the big ideas in complex text. They have to engage with the text. And to engage with the text, they must be able to read and understand it. So we have to teach close reading of complex text. And students are reading to build knowledge in content areas. And last time we spoke about unfinished learning. How can we address students' unfinished learning? So this is what we have been learning in a nutshell. Let us continue. So here we have resource coursework. We spoke about unfinished learning. We spoke about this document here that came from the Council of Great City Schools. We said that unfinished learning refers to any prerequisite knowledge or skills that students need for future work that they don't have yet. So we know that our students have gaps in their knowledge and in their skills, but we're not going to focus on remedial education. As we teach the grade level content, we will discover these gaps and we do just-in-time teaching. In the moment itself, we address these gaps. Okay, we have the priority learning standards. The priority learning standards come from your NGLS, the next generation learning standards. We looked at these standards last time. So it means that you are going to spend the bulk of your time talking about these standards, aligning your lessons to these standards. Doesn't mean that the other standards are not important. Of course, all the standards of the NGLS are important, but we're focusing most of our time on the priority learning standards. We also have learning maps. And the learning maps basically help the priority learning standards come alive with tangible pedagogical practices that can be implemented in a lesson. So this is our resource coursework. Please keep this in mind as we continue. So we know that all of our students have to learn 21st century skills. And we can say that the 21st century skills refer to the 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. So for students to think critically, they have to be exposed to complex text, right? Because they are going to learn about complex ideas because the language is complex and rich. And when they speak, we would like them to use academic language. So academic language is very important. To prepare students for the 21st century, they have to learn how to collaborate. So you see how we collaborated to help one another solve the tech issues that arise. Collaboration is very important, and our students have to learn these social emotional skills. There's also creativity. Remember that Einstein told us imagination is more important than knowledge. So give your students a chance to use their imagination when you teach in your lessons. Okay? Again, if you did not have a chance, please use the registration link to register and use the sign-in link and sign in. Okay? If you did not have a chance. So what is the read, talk, write cycle? Let's talk about that. So we have this brand new document from DML that we are going to explore. We have a few more PLs to do. We're starting with this document, but the next PLs, we will continue to explore this document. This document is called Read, Talk, Write in Person, Blended, and Remote Learning for Multilingual Learners. And this document is very important. What can we find in this document? Well, we can find ways educators can continue to develop students' language skills in the blended learning model. So it's all about developing their language skills and specifically developing their academic language skills. You want to develop their speaking skills, their listening skills, their reading skills, and their writing skills. We will talk about digital tools that you can use to help ELLs develop critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity skills. The 4 C's again that we just spoke about. In this document, you'll find the different roles that technology can play in your lessons. We'll talk about that in future PLs. And you'll get information on how to implement the read, talk, write, talk cycle in the blended learning model. So today we are going to focus on this. How can we implement the read, talk, write, talk cycle in the blended learning model? All of you are doing remote teaching, but eventually we'll go back to blended learning, right? And there's also information on hyperdocs. So if you don't know what hyperdocs are, I sent you the PowerPoint. You just click on it, then you get to see a YouTube video, and learn all about hyperdocs. So in the next coming PLs, we'll continue to explore this tool, this document, over and over again. But today we're focusing on this, okay? The read, talk, write, talk cycle. How can we implement it? So here it is right here. Many of you attended my advanced literacy PLs, and I spoke about hallmark 2 of advanced literacy, read and talk and discuss. This infographic is very important, right? Because it gives students a chance to discuss what they have read and what they have written. So you want to chunk text and set a purpose for reading. Give them maybe just a paragraph to read or half a page to read, but there must be a purpose for reading. So what big ideas will students discuss after reading? Give them a chance to talk. What protocol are you going to use to help students uh, basically experience success when they speak to one another? Then they get to write about what they spoke about and what they read. So you get to synthesize ideas after talking to someone about what you've read. And then they get to talk again. So what have you written? Share it with your partner. Perhaps your partner can help you revise and edit what you wrote so it can be very clear, right? Remember, revision is the essence of writing. So we're going to talk today about how we can implement this very important cycle in the blended learning model. All right. So what does it mean to read in a digital world? All of us now, we have gone digital. We had no choice, right? We're going back to advanced literacy again, and what Dr. Noliloso of Harvard said. Remember that in advanced literacy, text is a polysemous word. It has many different definitions. So text means what we see here, just words on paper, but it can also mean infographic. So what I just showed you here is an infographic, right? Because you have words, but you also have images. So we're combining the two to share information. That's considered an infographic. The water cycle, that's an infographic. A timeline is an infographic, okay? Also, you can give students photographs. You can give them paintings, political cartoons. And if you give them visuals, you can ask them to analyze the visuals. You can ask a few questions. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? So that's called image analysis. You can show them a YouTube video and ask them to answer questions or discuss what they have seen on the YouTube video. So all of that is text. So just keep in mind that text has so many different definitions in advanced literacy. Okay, so how is writing defined? For advanced literacy, writing is used to promote learners' language and cognitive skills. So we want to know how they think, what they are thinking, and we would like them to use academic language, right? That's so important that they use academic language that they have learned from the text they have read. So when students write, they're always writing about what they read and what they discussed. And we encourage them to adapt academic language from the text they read, and we encourage them to use the vocabulary words in context that they have learned within that unit. So basically, writing has to be based on text and it has to be structured, okay, because we would like to develop students' academic language skills. Let's continue. So now we're going to talk about the importance of academic conversations. Here's the question that I would like you to answer on Padlet. Many of you know that I am the Padlet queen. I love it. There's so much you can do with it. And many of you join me for office hours to learn more about Padlet. So here's the question. Why should teachers give students time to discuss what they have read and written with one another? Write your response on Padlet. So what I'm going to do is add the link to the chat and simply write down your response, okay? The importance of academic conversations. Copy and let's paste. Here it is. Right. So now you should have access to it. So if somebody has started already, anonymous, put your name, please. You might say something great and I might want to give you credit for it. I might want to praise you, but if you say you're anonymous, I have no idea who you are. So for those who haven't used it yet, if you go to the lower right-hand corner, you see a plus sign in a fuchsia circle. Click on that, it pops up, then you can start writing, okay? Thank you. So let's have about, I'll say 4 minutes for this. We'll see. Thank you, Louisa Carey, your name. Gail, thank you. Christine, thank you. Christine Jill, thank you and welcome. Mm-hmm. And also, if you like somebody's comment, just click on the little star, the little heart right here to indicate that you love the comment that the person made, okay? Mhm. So Louisa Carey wrote, it gives students an opportunity to practice what they want to say in a low stakes environment. Smaller group settings are great opportunities for ELLs, MLs to take risks they might not otherwise take in a whole class share out. Someone wrote, this helps students engage in critical thinking conversations and develop their language and social skills. Thank you. Dr. Isom wrote, the teacher will obtain a greater knowledge and understanding of the social, emotional, linguistic, and cognitive abilities of their students. Thank you. I'll move it here. Shakola wrote, teachers should give students time to discuss what they have read and written with one another. Okay? Okay, Christine wrote, I'm not sure why it is anonymous. I think if we give students time to discuss what they have learned, it allows for academic growth to happen in the classroom. Sometimes students don't understand the content, and allowing them to discuss the reading shows the level of understanding. They are then able to use each other as resources. All right. So what I can do is I can connect to a post. So if somebody wrote something that is similar to what you wrote, you can connect it to what that person said, right? So I'd like to connect what Chakola said to what Dr. Isom said. So I just click on connect, because I think there are similarities. All right. So Louisa, this person wrote anonymous. I don't know who you are, but you made a connection. So if you see that what somebody said is similar to what you said, you can click on the three dots here. You click on it, and then you click on connect to a post. You can also disconnect from a post if you think that if you made a mistake and you think the ideas do not relate to one another. So that's one way that you can use Padlet to help students make connections between ideas. So Howard Ziza made a connection to Gail. Howard wrote, students can get peer feedback or reinforcement of their thoughts. Okay, so right here, it's connected to, it gives them a chance to see the perspectives of others. They can learn from each other. So these two ideas are connected, and so that's what he did. And also something fun, you can change color. Click on the three dots. You just click on it, and the color changes. Right, so your students can have fun with this. So you might want to use Padlet if you want students to brainstorm, if you want them to create a web, that's how they can create it. They can simply connect, okay, to one another. Somebody added an image. Okay, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for adding an image. All right, wonderful. Actually, that's Rachel who added the image. Okay, good. Trying to make some more connections. We'll spend 1 more minute on this. See if you can make connections, read other people's comments, and see if you can make a connection.
I added that image by accident, actually.
Oh, okay.
I did something, I don't know what I did. I was trying to read it and then...
You can delete it. You can hover
Okay.
and then the trash can, it says delete post, and that's how you can delete it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Okay. So Julie wrote, when ELLs are given the opportunity to talk, they step into learning and the language and become fully engaged. That's true. So if you give them a chance to talk, they become much more engaged. They will be more likely to fully engage in the following activities. That's true. So for engagement's sake, give them a chance to talk. All right, so this is our Padlet. It's looking good. Let us continue. So we know why we should give them an opportunity to talk. It helps to develop their academic language skills. It helps to engage them. So now let's talk about synchronous versus asynchronous instruction. Synchronous instruction. Students attend live instruction in real time, right? Some of you are using Zoom for synchronous instruction. Some are using Google Meet for synchronous instruction. So some teachers, they save the higher order thinking skills for synchronous instruction because students will need their help to accomplish this. So if you want to talk about synthesizing information, it's best to leave it for synchronous instruction. If you would like students to apply concepts, that's best done during synchronous instruction. Asynchronous instruction. Students learn and work on content at their own pace through teacher-assigned tasks, not real time. So think about homework activities, research projects, right? That's asynchronous instruction. When planning, it is important for teachers to think about what students can do on their own within the lesson or unit. So you have entering and emerging ELLs, you have standalone ENL students, you have transitioning, you have expanding, you have to differentiate instruction for them, differentiate tasks for them. What can they do on their own doing asynchronous instruction? So that means when you create the tasks for asynchronous instruction, you have to be aware of students' English language proficiency levels and give them assignments based on their English language proficiency levels. So for entering and emerging ELLs, they can answer basic questions during asynchronous instruction. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. All right, so let's talk about activity number 1. So now what we're going to do, we're going to try something new. It's called EDGY, and I'm happy to introduce it to you. We're going to dive into this document that I showed you. We are going to read pages 6 to 10 of that document. The document is called Read, Talk, Write, In-Person, Blended, and Remote Learning for Multilingual Learners at EDGY. So what I did was I uploaded pages 6 to 10 to EDGY, and EDGY is an annotating tool. So what you are going to do is, as you read, whatever resonates with you, you are going to highlight and make comments. So let's go to EDGY so I can show you what I'm talking about. Okay? Let me just close up some things. Here's EDGY right here. So you all see EDGY. So you see this document that I was talking about. Here are the instructions. Please write comments to respond to the text as you read. When you are done, please respond to the comments of your colleagues. Thank you for your cooperation. So we are going to go into the Read, Talk, Write, In-Person, Blended, and Remote Learning for Multilingual Learners. We're basically reading pages 6 to 10. So how do you write comments on this? What you will do is highlight, and then something pops up. Let me do it again. You highlight, and then new pops up. You click on new. So what I highlighted is here. It's reflected here. And then I can write down, okay, my comments. Why did I highlight this? Perhaps I have a question about it. Perhaps I want to paraphrase it. Perhaps it's meaningful to me. So now I have to explain why it's meaningful to me. So basically, I write my comment. Then I click on save. And now my comment is here. Okay, I can close this out. So please read this.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just really quickly, this is kind of like, I haven't seen this, and this I could see a lot of potential in this EDGY, I believe.
Yes, it's EDGY.
Is it something that you download into your Google Classroom?
Actually, you go on, you can connect it to Google Classroom, I believe, but you go online to the EDGY website, but they only give you 2 free ones. So then you will have to buy it so that your students can have access, but you can use it twice for free.
Because
right?
this
So it
is
does
the
limit
great,
you, like Padlet limits you.
it could be a great tool because, you know, as we're going in class, we're going, let's say we're taking turns reading a text and then maybe putting comments to it and remembering when the kids are going back to answer the questions, they could just go back and actually look in at the that we talked about. It's a great visual reminder, but also it's a great visual reminder for the kids that we're not there and they get to go back and get a chance to look at that.
Right. So
I will explore that. Thank you.
Okay.
EDGY, right?
And of course, reach out to me too. I'll have office hours and I can talk about EDGY. I can teach you how to use EDGY. You can actually add questions to it. Students can record their responses, right? But for today, we are going to focus on just writing our comments and responding to one another's comments.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
So I have the EDGY link in the chat. Just click on it so you can have access, start reading, start commenting. So you have 10 minutes. Okay. So once you have commented twice, you can actually click on reply to comment on somebody else's comment. So we're having a discussion based on the text. So 11 comments already registered. Thank you. You've learned about EDGI. Many of you are interested because it gives your students a chance to annotate as they read, gives them a chance to engage with the text, right? And it helps you understand what they understand and what they're thinking, because reading is thinking. So this tool gives your students a chance to reveal to you what they are learning, what they are thinking as they read. Okay? So you might want to use this tool doing synchronous instruction, especially when they read complex text. Of course, you have to model for them. I think it's best to just focus on one thing at a time. So I said, okay, let's just highlight and let's comment on what we have highlighted, and let's respond to other people's comments. But they can also record what they want to say, right? They can also they can upload images, emojis. There's a lot more that you can do with it. They can also write answers to questions. But I think if you're first introducing it to students, you do one thing at a time, right? Otherwise, it's overwhelming, and that's what I modeled here. It can be overwhelming if we're doing so much with EDGI, but as they master one thing at a time, you keep on adding to it so that they can do all that can be done with EDGI. So when we come back, we have these questions to answer. We're going to use Padlet to answer them. While planning, educators must first ask themselves the following questions. What reading, talking, and writing opportunities can either teacher teach on-site or synchronously? And what teaching and learning opportunities can occur asynchronously? So you're always thinking about that, right? And number two is, how can I structure what is taught on-site, synchronously or asynchronously? So right now you're not on site, but you're doing synchronous and asynchronous instruction. So how can you structure, how can you organize what you teach synchronously or asynchronously? Okay, so let me put on this Padlet for you to answer these questions. Let me put it in the chat. You can click on it and start typing. And you can also basically add comments. So if somebody wrote something that you like, respond to that person. You can also click on the heart to indicate that you liked somebody's comment, okay? So how can I structure what is taught synchronously and asynchronously? Someone would post videos and have the students respond in writing, all right? So that can be done synchronously as well as asynchronously. So it all depends on the content of the video. I think if it's a very complex topic, then, thinking of video as text, then it makes sense to do it synchronously. But if it's something that they can understand on their own, then they can do it asynchronously. Keep in mind that they can slow down the rate of speech, and also they can translate the closed caption in their home languages for the YouTube videos. So if you don't know how to do that, reach out to me. So what can be done in asynchronous instruction? Elizabeth wrote flip grid discussions, posted video tutorials, and resource files. Thank you. So Christine wrote, and I think we have two Christines today. Christine Mbemba wrote, using breakout rooms or shared document, similar to what we are using today. So I think she's talking about EDGI. Students can share their reactions and responses to an infographic text. Okay, good. So Min Ching was able to respond to what Christine wrote. Absolutely. So you can respond to one another's comments. Okay. So at this time, you can unmute if you'd like to say something, talk about your experiences. Because I spent 14 years in the classroom, I was an ELA and ENL teacher, but I never did remote instruction, right? So this is an experience that you're having that I never had because of this pandemic. So if you'd like to talk about what you do for synchronous instruction, what you do for asynchronous instruction, and how you structure synchronous and asynchronous instruction, please unmute and let us have a discussion concerning this. So I see Christine is posting a lot, so perhaps Christine would like to talk. Oh, I like that. Somebody wrote anonymous. I'd like to give you credit, but since you wrote anonymous, I cannot. You wrote down using polling, doing a synchronous session, or something thought asynchronous. All right, thank you.
Oh, yeah, that was me. I forgot to write my name in, but yeah, students working with each other. It's a good review and it gets everybody engaged in polling instead of asking for volunteers or picking on a specific student. Everybody gets the opportunity to answer the question.
Okay, thank you. And it's a great, you can build community, right, through polls, and you can learn so much about your students. I've seen teachers use it to address social and emotional learning, like how are you feeling today, just to get the pulse of the class. I've seen that done. Someone else would like to share? Thank you. I don't want to do voluntold.
Hi, Marie. I think you were calling on me before, but I had to switch screens so that I could make sure that I had my mic and my camera on. So
Okay,
sorry
good.
about
It's
that.
good to see you. It's been a long time since I've seen you.
How are you, Marie?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Good, thank you, and thank you for this. So I think sometimes, so I'm an assistant principal at FDR High School. We have, a very large ENL population, and I think one of the areas that we're really trying to hone in on with our teachers is that everyone is a teacher of ELLs, and that is a message that we want to reinforce consistently. And I think a big part of it is deciding when you're going to teach something synchronously versus what students are going to do asynchronously. So what we have found to be useful is the synchronous portion usually consists of hooking your students in with some kind of an activity or discussion that they can very easily relate to, and using different modalities. Usually the infographics we love to use in social studies because we could apply those historical thinking skills to a map, a chart, a graph, a stimulus based resource. But then it really becomes a matter of, well, how are we having students really engage and discuss? So we have maybe breakout rooms in the synchronous portion, and then a modeling of a specific skill, right? Modeling and reinforcement of a specific skill. So say if you're teaching how to cite and annotate a document, that's something the teacher would lead students through. And then in breakout rooms, they would work on that particular skill with other documents, right, for support. Asynchronously, they can continue practicing that. And then usually what we see is the following day, teachers will look at where some of the kinks were and where some of the difficulties were in students learning. And then they will try to reinforce and kind of reteach whatever concept was not really being understood or internalized from what they saw with the asynchronous work. So I think the hardest part of this whole experience is balancing and determining what warrants that synchronous time, and how do we make sure we build the scaffolding so that students can do the work asynchronously.
Right, definitely. Do you find that they participate in breakout rooms? Because do you find that they participate in breakout rooms? Because I find that even with adults, when I attend PLs,
right,
everybody's silent. Somebody has to break the silence. It takes them a while to warm up. I guess because we're with strangers, but it helps if the teacher can visit each breakout room and try to encourage them to speak. And I think you really have to think about the students who are extroverts, who like to speak. So you have to have at least one or two extroverts in every small breakout room, because some students are so shy they won't say anything. But how do you find it? They don't turn on their cameras. Do they speak really and engage in breakout rooms?
Yeah, I mean, that's an uphill battle, and we've been talking about that a lot in our school, because one of the ways to really measure engagement and presence and to be able to tell whether or not the student is understanding what's happening is to see their face. So we don't have, all cameras on all the time, and that's something we're trying, to work towards. With the breakout rooms, what helps, I think, most, because in a larger class discussion, students are really reluctant to speak. But if you're strategizing in breakout rooms so that you have, let's say, 3 or 4 students in each room, and you want to, of course, pick the ones that you think will be more talkative, but also when teachers are popping in to monitor it. So where I saw it work best was when it was happening in co-teaching pairs, so that you would have teachers going into different rooms and making sure the conversation was taking place, and to reinforce the fact that there is a participation rubric for remote learning, which I have to say, my colleague Elizabeth Messman, who's the FDR AP ENL and World Languages, she has shared that with us, and it's actually been extremely helpful and valuable because it was modified to kind of fit with this new environment that we're all in. And now, yes.
Do you mind sending it to me so I can check with the other teachers?
Yeah, I mean,
all the high schools.
Elizabeth would be.
That's okay with you. That sounds great. I think that's a useful tool. Okay. Well, thank you, Christine. Thank you.
I didn't create it, so that's all. That's all.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yes. Thank you for participating. That's what I meant when I said thank you, Christine. Okay, so let's continue for our presentation. All right. So again, if you have not registered or signed in, please sign in. Okay. So we're going to talk about the read, talk, write cycle. This is another activity that we are going to engage in. So what you're going to do is you are going to read pages 11 to 13 from the Read, Talk, Write in-person blended and remote learning for multilingual learners. It's basically a vignette for integrated ENL. Then you are going to answer these questions on the vignette organizer Padlet. So what do you notice about the teacher's approach to using the Read, Talk, Write cycle? How does the cycle support students' knowledge building? How does the teacher provide the same opportunities for learning, whether on-site, synchronous, or asynchronous? And where are the departures? And also, there's one more question to answer. What would be the challenges when trying to implement this cycle, on-site, synchronous, and asynchronous? So what would be challenging in trying to implement it? So at this time, I'm going to put this in the chat so that you can read pages 11 to 13. Okay, it's just a simple vignette of a teacher thinking about what is best for synchronous instruction, asynchronous instruction, and on-site. But when you answer the questions, focus on asynchronous and synchronous since nobody's doing on-site now. Okay, so for the interest of time, you can do that. Okay, so Howard Ziza wrote, what do you notice about the teacher's approach to using the Read, Talk, Write cycle? How does the cycle support students' knowledge building? So Howard wrote, the teacher's approach takes into account the students' background knowledge and culture and develops their critical thinking skills. The approach employs numerous modalities to reach each child's type of learning. Thank you, Howard. Louisa wrote, I like how the teacher delivers the same content to each class, just modified slightly to better meet the needs of being in person and or online. Students will have opportunities to engage with the material and one another in the Read, Talk, Write cycle. Thank you. Great. Rachel wrote, teacher uses different kinds of technology to ensure MLs can discuss with each other whether they can be in class synchronously. Flipgrid. Students have access to reading, recording, gallery walks, responses, Flipgrid. So they use Flipgrid to respond to one another to develop their oral communication skills. So she's she's basically developing the language skills in the 4 language modalities. All right, so building background knowledge, Louisa Carey wrote that she begins with images and she asks students to share their own. So Howard Ziza wrote about one challenge. He says making it cohesive between remote, in-person, and hybrid learning. I think many of you have faced that challenge. Louisa wrote, it might be a bit time consuming at first for the teacher, but I think as the systems fall in place, it will become easier for all involved. And then one person wrote, one challenge would be timing, because it often takes my students a very long time to respond in the chat or verbally, right? Especially if they're entering and emerging, they're processing language. They have to think first. If you ask a question in English, they first think of the response in their home languages, and then they have to basically interpret the response in English. So that takes extra time, right? So it takes more time for them to produce language. That's why you have to be patient as a teacher. All right. Oh, great. So other people commented on what Victoria said. So Anonymous would agreed, me too, or you call on a student and they just never answer because they're not there. Oh no. And then Christine wrote, that is an area for growth in synchronous learning, prioritizing what needs to be taught and eliminating some of the extraneous that can waste face-to-face time or done asynchronously. So yeah, I agree with Christine that we really have to think, we have to be strategic, we have to be intentional. That's the word that I need to know exactly what we are going to do synchronously and what we will do asynchronously. All right, thank you so much for sharing. So after doing this, we're going to move on to our final activity. There's so much for us to do. But this one is basically analyzing a lesson, and it basically comes from Teach Hub. Many of you have been using the Teach Hub lessons, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you just speak if you have been using them. And some of you have been using them, some of you have contacted me during office hours, and you spoke about basically adding more scaffolding tools and strategies to give students access to grade level content. So for those who have been using it, especially for those who basically contacted me for office hours and we had this very important conversation, how can we add even more scaffolding tools to give students access? Let's talk about how this curriculum actually infuses the read, talk, write, talk cycle. And if it doesn't, what have you done to make sure it infuses the read, talk, write, talk cycle? So I sent the lesson for you to take a look at. It was the first lesson, but because of time, we won't have time to really go into it, but many of you are already using these lessons. You have been delivering these lessons. So what opportunities do you see to implement the read, talk, write, talk cycle within these lessons? Any volunteers, please unmute and share. I don't want to call on people because I know who contacted me during office hours and what we spoke about. I know who's online, who has joined us. So I don't want to say, oh, you're voluntold. But I'm thinking of Sharon, right? Who has used this, who has seen this. I'm thinking of Miss Little, Miss Sophia Little, who has also used it. Can you please talk about your experience using this tool, this curriculum? Thank you.
Well, I can say that I'm sorry. This is
Thank you, Sharon.
I'm just saying that I kind of handpick some of the students who are really struggling, and I've sent it to them as an additional assignment because we're working on just one curriculum, not a standalone. But I think that would help them. I am actually waiting to hear back. It's like 7, 8 students who are really struggling with language. And I sent it to them. I asked them to, complete it. We'll talk or have chats whenever we can. But so far, I haven't heard back from them. But that was only done like last week. So I'm just waiting to hear back. But I mean, I think it's such a good curriculum. It's such a good standalone lesson that I think they will get it. I'm hoping that they will get it.
It's good, but I think they need the teacher's help to understand parts of it because his grade level content is 9th grade. So we did not water down the language. We did not simplify language, but instead we basically added scaffolding tools to give students access to it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, with the 11th grade, we're all working on one unit. So I'm going to have to set aside time to trying to get them all together is difficult. If I have to do it on Teams with them individually, I will. But I know it's something that they will need the teacher's assistance in. So that's what I'm going to have to do, schedule time to meet with them individually or as a small group.
Right. So you can meet with them as a small group and give them that support that they need to have access to it, to continue to develop their academic language skills. But also, there are teachers who are actually using it as their standalone ENL curriculum. I know Miss Little's using it, right? And there are others who contacted me and said, oh, it's taking me 2 days to do a lesson using this curriculum. And I said, okay, fine. We're focusing on depth of learning and not breadth of learning. Remember the principles of unfinished learning. And so I have worked with teachers to add extra scaffolding tools to give the students access to it. And I'm part of this project too, working on these curriculum. So it's very important for me to get feedback from teachers to know what we can do differently to continue to give students access to grade level content. But there's always an opportunity for students to discuss. There's collaboration. We do make sure that we have that opportunity for students to have academic conversations because as you know, as you understand, that helps students with their reading skills and their writing skills if they have a chance to discuss what they're learning. So for those of you who do not know it, please continue to explore it. If you need to contact me to learn how you can add even more scaffolding tools to give the ELLs access to it, please reach out to me and we'll discuss it during office hours, okay?
I was just going to add a little bit to that. This is Erkonda Feratovic, and I actually, as a department, we've been doing this. We've been using some of this, I think, raw curriculum that was already predetermined for us with this whole online teaching, and it was a great tool. I'm having trouble accessing it, and maybe it has to do something with the fact that I wasn't able to access earlier as well. So
Okay.
I'm just going to send you an email. I was just going to add that just to make sure. This is a great, there are great units, as a matter of fact, that could be incorporated into those people that are struggling right now with standalone entering level students. And I think this is kind of like, people should spread the word around, because I don't think a lot of people know where it is and how to access it. Because a lot of people, as we have shifted towards a new standalone, that are specifically language standalone classes, the people are struggling with the curriculum, and this is a great resource. People have well thought this, and it could be laid out and very helpful with building academic language, and also interacting with curriculum that is more culturally sensitive.
Okay.
And that is very important to kind of spread the word.
So it's advanced literacy, CRSEs, everything that we've been talking about. And what I like about it is the fact that we don't water down the curriculum for the students.
Right.
We're using the language, we're using academic language, we're amplifying the curriculum by embedding the scaffolding tools, but we don't believe in watering down the language, because when they take the English Regents, it's not going to be watered down. When they take the SAT, it won't be watered down. In college, things won't be watered down for them. So we want to give them access.
And it's very much in sync with disciplinary. So it's very much in sync with social studies and ELA and all that language that they need, and those essential questions that they need to answer.
Yeah, definitely.
So just spread the word, guys.
Okay.
Well, for me.
If you cannot access it, email me during office hours. We'll talk about it. We'll access it.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to do right now is work on self-reflection. So what I would like you to do is take some time to write down one question you still have and one thing you will implement. So that's why we attend professional learning sessions. What are you going to implement? And I'm going to put it in the chat as usual. So simply write down, please, the question that you have, one thing you will implement. And based on your questions, I usually reach out to you so that we can have office hours. Okay? And then once you're done with that, we'll do the feedback form.